Ethan adjusted his grip on the handles of his luggage as the shuttle docked smoothly at Arcturus Station. The spaceport buzzed with activity, a melting pot of species from across the galaxy, all communicating in a symphony of languages and gestures that could overwhelm any newcomer. "Welcome to Arcturus Station," a robotic voice announced over the intercom as the passengers began to disembark. Ethan stepped into the throng, his eyes wide with the kind of eager curiosity that had driven his career in xenolinguistics. At the reception area, he was greeted by a towering Jernke official, his 4 eyes blinking asynchronously. "Identification, please," the Jernke rumbled, extending a hand with 7 fingers. "Of course," Ethan replied, handing over his ID chip. He watched as the official inserted it into a scanner. "First time at Arcturus?" "Yes, indeed. I'm here to study communication patterns of non-human species. Heard this is the best place in the galaxy for that." The Jernke handed back the ID chip. "You'll find no better place. Many languages spoken here. You study silence too." Ethan perked up at the mention. "Absolutely, that's part of the plan. Any advice on how to approach them?" The official shrugged, a gesture Ethan had learned meant amusement among Jernke. "Silence are tricky. They communicate, but not in ways we're used to. You'll need patience and perhaps a new approach." "Thank you, I'll keep that in mind." Ethan pocketed his ID and moved towards the baggage claim, his thoughts already racing with possibilities. As he waited for his bags, another human approached him, a middle-aged man with a badge that read Dr. Simon Hayes, anthropologist. "You're Ethan, right?" "Ethan Morris." Simon extended his hand, which Ethan shook. "Heard you're going to be working on the Silent Project. I'm looking into their social structures myself." "That's right, Dr. Hayes. I'm hoping to bridge some gaps in our understanding." Simon nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Maybe we can collaborate. The Silents are fascinating, but challenging. No one's really gotten close to understanding their deep communication methods." Ethan collected his bags, and the 2 men started walking toward the station's main hub. "I have some ideas that might just work. It involves a new translation device I've been developing." "Interesting," Simon replied, adjusting his glasses. "I've observed their interactions. It's like they speak through vibrations in the air, not just sound. Your device could help decode that." "Exactly my thought," Ethan said, feeling a surge of excitement. "It's about translating those vibrations into something we can understand." As they reached the hub, a panoramic view of the nebula beyond the station's transparent walls greeted them. Ethan couldn't help but pause, struck by the beauty of it all. Simon followed his gaze. "Beautiful, isn't it? Makes you appreciate the diversity out here. Makes the challenges seem worthwhile." "Definitely," Ethan agreed, his mind already weaving through the linguistic puzzles he hoped to solve. "I think if we can understand the silence, it could change how we interact with many other species too." "Let's hope," Simon said as they headed toward the research quarters. "I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Let's catch up after you settle in. Maybe grab a meal at the hub? They serve a decent Terran burger." "That sounds great," Ethan replied, his spirits lifted. The prospect of groundbreaking work, combined with a new ally, made him feel ready to take on whatever the station had to throw at him. Together, they walked deeper into the heart of Arcturus Station, ready to delve into the mysteries of alien communication that awaited them. Chapter 2. The Encounter. Ethan followed Dr. Simon Hayes through the bustling corridors of Arcturus Station, their steps echoing slightly on the metal floor. The observation deck loomed ahead, a massive windowed area offering a stunning view of the cosmos. It was here, Simon had explained, that many informal meetings took place, a neutral ground for all species. As they approached the deck, Simon gestured to a figure standing alone, looking out at the nebula. "There," he whispered to Ethan, "that's Lyra. She's one of the silents we've been discussing." Ethan's pulse quickened at the chance to meet one of the elusive silents firsthand. They approached slowly, careful not to startle her. "Lyra," Simon called gently. The figure turned, her eyes large and luminous, skin shimmering with a subtle iridescence. Her presence was serene, almost ethereal. Lyra nodded in acknowledgment but made no sound, her expression calm and inviting. "Ethan here is a linguist," Simon introduced. "He's eager to learn about your communication methods. We were hoping you might help us understand." Lyra tilted her head, considering them with a quiet curiosity. Then, to Ethan's astonishment, she reached out and gently placed her hand on his chest. He felt a soft vibration, an unspoken greeting that resonated within him. Ethan smiled, taking a tentative step forward. "I'm developing a device that might help us communicate better. Would you be willing to try it with me?" Using a small, handheld translator, Ethan offered it to Lyra. She examined the device with interest, her fingers tracing the contours delicately. "This device," Ethan began, demonstrating, "captures vibrational patterns and translates them into audible speech. It's experimental, but I hope it can bridge the gap between our species." Lyra nodded slowly, handing back the device. She then gestured for Ethan to follow her to a quieter corner of the deck. As they settled down, Lyra spoke, her voice a low hum modulated by the device. "I am curious about your interest in us," the device translated, its electronic tone soft but clear. Ethan leaned in, his mind racing with questions. "Your species communicates in ways we're only beginning to understand. By learning from you, we can not only understand your culture, but perhaps improve how we relate to other species as well." Lyra listened intently, her gaze never wavering from Ethan's face. "Many have tried to understand us, but few have attempted to listen truly," she said through the translator. "I want to listen," Ethan replied earnestly. "I want to learn from you, not just about you." A smile flickered across Lyra's face, a subtle shift that Ethan felt more than saw. "Then let us start at the beginning. Our communication is not just about conveying information. It is about sharing experience, emotion." Simon, who had been observing quietly, chimed in. "Perhaps we could make this a collaborative effort. I could bring insights from my studies in anthropology." Lyra nodded approvingly. "Collaboration could be beneficial. We value the convergence of different perspectives." For the next few hours, the trio discussed potential collaboration methods, Lyra explaining her people's history and culture, while Ethan and Simon shared their backgrounds in human linguistics and anthropology. The session was illuminating, not just in terms of data, but in building a bridge of mutual respect and understanding. As they parted ways, Lyra's parting words vibrated softly through Ethan's translator. "This is a good beginning." Ethan couldn't help but agree, feeling a profound sense of connection. He looked back at the observation deck, where dozens of species mingled. For the first time, he saw it not just as a meeting place, but as a confluence of countless lives and stories, all interwoven. He and Simon walked back to their quarters, discussing plans and possibilities. "We're on the verge of something great," Simon remarked with a grin. "Yes," Ethan replied, his mind still on Lyra's words. "A great beginning indeed." Chapter 3. The Connection. After their initial meeting with Lyra, Ethan and Simon decided to delve deeper into the silent culture by visiting the station's dedicated interspecies garden. This tranquil space was designed to foster peaceful interactions among different civilizations, and it seemed the perfect setting to further their understanding. As they walked along the path lined with flora from various worlds, Simon pointed out a secluded bench. "Let's sit here. You mentioned wanting to learn their non-verbal cues. This setting might help." Ethan nodded, his notebook ready. "Yes, I think the environment might encourage more open communication. Plus, I'm interested in how their sensory perceptions work in different atmospheres." They hadn't been seated long when Lyra appeared. She seemed to glide rather than walk, her movements fluid and harmonious with the surrounding nature. Joining them, she sat gracefully, a slight smile on her lips. "Good day, Lyra," Ethan began, switching on his device. "We thought this garden might be more comfortable for our discussion." "It is pleasing," Lyra's translated voice hummed. "Many of these plants are similar to the flora of my homeworld. It feels familiar." "That's fascinating," Simon interjected. "Do you think that the environment of a place can affect how communication takes place?" "Indeed," Lyra replied. "Our senses are heightened in familiar settings. We are more receptive to deep connections." Ethan leaned in, intrigued. "Could we try an experiment? Maybe you could share something in your language, something simple, and let us guess the meaning through your expressions and the context." Lyra considered this for a moment, then nodded. She stood, and with deliberate slowness, extended her arms towards the sky, her palms facing upwards. A soft, low hum emanated from her, the sound vibrating through the air. Simon and Ethan watched intently, trying to decipher her message. After a moment, Ethan ventured a guess. "Is it something to do with growth or openness?" Lyra sat back down, her eyes lighting up. "Yes, it is an expression of welcoming greater understanding, of reaching out to gather knowledge." "That's incredible," Ethan said, making notes. "It's like poetry, your language. It is meant to be felt as much as understood," Lyra explained. "Now, may I propose something? I would like to try understanding you in the same way." "Of course," Simon agreed, looking at Ethan. Ethan thought for a moment, then mirrored Lyra's gesture, raising his arms but adding a slight twist, his palms facing each other. He focused on projecting a sense of sharing. Lyra watched, her head tilted. After a moment, she responded, "You are offering something, a sharing of ideas, perhaps?" "Exactly," Ethan said, impressed. "It's about partnership and mutual growth." The three spent the afternoon exchanging simple phrases and gestures, learning to communicate through body language and subtle cues. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the garden, Ethan felt a profound shift in their relationship. They were no longer researcher and subject, but partners in a dance of intercultural dialogue. As they prepared to leave, Simon suggested, "Why don't we document these sessions? We could create a guide for others who wish to communicate with the silence." Lyra agreed, her voice a soft melody through the translator. "I would like that. It is important to share what we learn." Walking back to their quarters, Ethan felt a buzz of excitement. "Simon, this could be the beginning of a new field of study. Interspecies non-verbal communication." Simon laughed, clapping him on the back. "Let's do it, Ethan. Let's really understand each other, beyond words." As they parted ways, Ethan looked back at the garden, its peace etched into his memory. He knew these small steps were just the beginning, but they were moving in the right direction, towards a future where understanding transcended species. Chapter 4. The Revelation. In the days following their groundbreaking session in the garden, Ethan and Simon's enthusiasm for their project grew exponentially. To deepen their understanding, they decided to visit the archives of Arcturus Station, where galactic knowledge was stored, including ancient silent art and scripts that few had studied closely. Upon entering the vast, dimly lit archive room, Ethan's gaze was immediately drawn to the holographic displays showcasing artifacts and texts from various civilizations. "This place never ceases to amaze me," he remarked, his voice echoing softly. Simon nodded, his eyes scanning the index panel. "Let's find the silent section. Their art could give us insights into their emotional expression and historical events." The two men navigated through rows of digital shelves, finally arriving at a secluded area dedicated to silent culture. The section was less colorful than the others, dominated by monochrome artifacts that vibrated subtly, a feature unique to silent creations. Ethan reached out to activate a display, which sprang to life, showing intricate patterns that seemed to move and shift. "Look at this, Simon. It's almost like the art itself is trying to communicate." Simon, who was examining a different piece, glanced over. "It's not just decorative. I think each pattern might correspond to a specific emotion or idea. Like their language, their art requires us to feel rather than just see." Lyra joined them, having agreed to help interpret the artifacts. "These are historical records," she explained through the translator. "Each pattern tells a story of our past, our struggles, and our joys. This one," she gestured towards the display Ethan was looking at, "depicts the era of the Great Silence, a time of introspection and discovery for our people." Intrigued, Ethan asked, "Could you help us understand what this pattern conveys? Maybe we could attempt to translate an art piece." Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the soft light of the hologram. "This swirl here represents a journey inward, the search for knowledge within oneself. The sharp lines show the sudden insights gained along the way." As they moved from one piece to another, Lyra narrated the stories behind them, with Ethan and Simon taking meticulous notes. The atmosphere in the archive was one of shared discovery, with each artifact offering new layers of understanding. Ethan, absorbed by the stories, realized the potential of this venture. "Simon, we should consider a publication, a compilation of these translations and what they mean for interspecies communication." "That's a brilliant idea," Simon responded enthusiastically. "It could revolutionize how we approach alien cultures, not just studying them, but truly understanding them." Their discussion was cut short by the arrival of another researcher, Dr. Marcus Leung, who specialized in xenohistory. "I heard about your project," he said, extending his hand to Ethan. "Fascinating work. I've studied silent history, but never through their art. Maybe I could offer some historical context." "Absolutely," Ethan welcomed him. "Your expertise could help us bridge some gaps." Together, the trio, guided by Lyra, delved deeper into the silent culture, discussing potential interpretations and the broader implications for other species. Marcus provided historical parallels from other civilizations, enriching their understanding. As the session came to an end, Ethan felt a profound sense of accomplishment. "Thanks to all of you, we're not just translating words, but emotions and historical echoes." Lyra's translated voice was warm. "It is good to share our heritage. Understanding grows in the space between words." Leaving the archive, the men discussed their next steps. "Let's meet again next week," Simon suggested. "We'll start drafting our first article." Ethan nodded, his mind already racing with ideas. "This is just the beginning," he said as they stepped out into the light of the corridor, the weight of silent history accompanying them, urging them on to further revelations. Chapter 5. The Breakthrough. Ethan's quarters on Arcturus Station had become a makeshift laboratory, the air thick with anticipation. He had invited Lyra there to test the new version of his translation device, hoping it could better capture the subtle nuances of silent communication. "Thanks for coming, Lyra," Ethan greeted her as she entered. The room was equipped with various sensors and monitors, all aimed at decoding the complex vibrational patterns of her language. Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the setup with evident curiosity. "I am eager to see if your adjustments might convey our expressions more clearly," she said through the existing translator. Simon and Dr. Marcus Leung were also present, their roles crucial in providing feedback and additional perspectives. "Let's get started then," Simon suggested, his tone professional yet tinged with excitement. Ethan handed Lyra a small, sleek device, a new prototype. "I've integrated a system that should interpret vibrational frequencies more accurately and translate them into human speech instantaneously. Let's test it." Lyra took the device, attaching it gently to her throat. She spoke, and immediately the device emitted a clear, melodious voice, much more fluid than the previous versions. "That sounds amazing," Marcus commented, impressed by the clarity. "Can you tell us something complex? Maybe describe your feelings about this project." Lyra's response was a deep, resonant sound that filled the room, the device translating her vibrations into words. "This collaboration brings a sense of unity and understanding that I find profoundly fulfilling. It feels like reaching out across a vast expanse and finally touching another's soul." Ethan jotted down notes, his mind racing with the implications. "This is incredible. It's not just translating your words. It seems to capture the emotional inflections as well." "Yes," Lyra agreed. "It is very close to how we convey feelings among our own kind." Encouraged, Simon proposed an experiment. "Let's try a more dynamic interaction. Lyra, could you have a conversation with Ethan about something contentious? I want to see how the device handles emotional stress." Ethan and Lyra exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. "Okay," Ethan said. "Lyra, sometimes I worry that this project might change your culture or influence it in ways we can't anticipate. Does that concern you?" Lyra responded, her voice calm but carrying a subtle undercurrent of concern. "It is a valid worry. But remember, sharing knowledge does not have to mean losing one's identity. It is a risk, yes, but one that can bring about greater understanding." The device flawlessly conveyed the nuances, making Ethan nod appreciatively. "I see your point. It's about balance, then." "Exactly," Lyra's translated voice agreed. As the session continued, Marcus observed the interactions, occasionally interjecting with questions or suggestions to deepen the dialogue. After several hours, the group took a break, gathering around the small table in Ethan's quarters where refreshments were served. "This could really change interspecies relations," Marcus said, sipping his drink. "Not just with the silence, but potentially with all species we encounter." Simon, always the thinker, added, "It also raises ethical considerations. We must be careful about how we use this technology." Ethan acknowledged this with a nod. "Absolutely. We'll need guidelines, ethical frameworks for its use." Lyra listened to all this, her expression thoughtful. "This device could help many understand us better, but we must also ensure it respects the user's intentions and privacy." The discussion that followed was rich and multifaceted, touching on technical, ethical, and philosophical issues. By the end of the day, they had outlined a plan to refine the device further and draft a set of ethical guidelines for its use. As Lyra departed, she turned to Ethan with a smile. Today was a significant step forward. Ethan smiled back, his heart light. "Thanks to you, Lyra. We're really making progress." The day's success filled him with a profound sense of accomplishment and possibility. As he watched Lyra leave, he felt more connected to the universe's vast tapestry than ever before, their project a thread weaving through the cosmos, binding disparate entities in understanding and respect. Chapter 6. The Intimacy. In the quiet of Lyra's habitation unit on Arcturus Station, Ethan felt a world away from the bustling corridors and busy labs. The environment was adjusted to mimic Lyra's homeworld, with a lower gravity and a soft, continuous hum that vibrated gently through the air, an ambience that put one's senses on edge in the most pleasant way. "Thank you for inviting me here," Ethan said as he looked around, fascinated by the alien yet comforting setting. Lyra, who had become more than just a subject of study to him, replied through the newly refined translator device. I wanted you to experience a bit of my world. I believe it can deepen our understanding. Ethan nodded, his eyes meeting hers. It's beautiful, Lyra. I can see how your environment shapes you. They sat on a pair of softly glowing chairs, designed to enhance comfort and relaxation. Lyra began, her voice harmonious and inviting. I think it's important to share not just thoughts but spaces. It tells so much more about us. Eager to explore this new dimension of their relationship, Ethan leaned forward, his interest piqued. Tell me something personal about your world that you haven't shared yet. Lyra paused, her gaze introspective. In our culture, the bond between individuals is celebrated through a ceremony of harmony. It is not just a union but a melding of experiences, a sharing of personal spaces. Intrigued, Ethan responded, Is that similar to human concepts of marriage? In some ways, yes, but it is deeper. It is about understanding and accepting each other's essence. Lyra explained, her voice deep and resonant. I've always admired how your people integrate emotion and understanding, Ethan said, genuinely moved by her description. Lyra then proposed, Would you like to try a part of the ceremony? It is quite simple but meaningful. Ethan felt a flutter of anticipation. Yes, I'd like that. Lyra instructed him to close his eyes and focus on the vibrations of the room. Slowly, she began to emit a series of low, soothing tones. Ethan felt the vibrations wash over him, entering a state of deep relaxation and connection. After a few moments, Lyra ceased her humming, and Ethan opened his eyes. That was incredible. I felt like I was part of the room, part of you. That's the purpose, Lyra said with a soft smile. To feel the connection that goes beyond words and physical presence. Their discussion ventured into deeper territories of silent culture and human relationships, each learning from the other. The evening progressed with shared stories and laughter, the connection between them strengthening. As they prepared to part ways, Ethan expressed his gratitude. Tonight was enlightening. I feel we've reached a new level of understanding. Lyra nodded, her expression one of mutual respect and affection. I agree. It's rare to find such a connection, especially between such different beings. Back in his own quarters, Ethan reflected on the evening. The experience had not only deepened his professional respect for Lyra, but had also sown the seeds of a profound personal bond. He realized that their relationship was evolving into something unique, an amalgamation of friendship and partnership that transcended species. As he drifted off to sleep, the last thoughts that flickered through his mind were of Lyra's harmonious tones, a soothing lullaby that promised more discoveries and shared moments in the days to come. Chapter 7. The Challenge. The collaboration between Ethan and Lyra had not gone unnoticed on Arcturus Station. Word of their unique partnership and the breakthroughs in communication it had yielded spread fast, drawing both admiration and skepticism. A meeting was called by the station's council to discuss the implications of their work, inviting Ethan and Lyra to present their findings. In a large conference room filled with representatives from various species, Ethan felt the weight of their stares as he and Lyra prepared to address the assembly. Simon and Dr. Marcus Leung stood by their side, supportive and equally anxious about the reception their work would receive. Thank you for gathering here, Ethan began, his voice steady despite the nerves. We've made significant advancements in understanding the silent language, which could aid in fostering better relations not only with the silents but potentially with all species aboard this station. Lyra took over, her translated voice resonant and clear. Our collaboration has been based on mutual respect and curiosity. We have learned much from each other and hope to continue our work. A Pytharian delegate, a species known for their meticulous scrutiny of new ideas, raised a hand. While your achievements are commendable, how can we be sure that this technology will not be misused? What safeguards are in place to protect against invasive use of such sensitive communicational tools? Simon stepped forward, addressing the concern. That's a valid point. We are in the process of drafting a set of ethical guidelines to govern the use of this technology. We aim for transparency and accountability in all our work. Another voice chimed in, this time from a human representative. And what about the cultural implications? Are we risking diluting the silent culture by making their private means of communication accessible to all? Dr. Leung responded, we are aware of the cultural sensitivity required. Our approach has been, and will continue to be, led by the silent community. Lyra here has been instrumental in guiding our research to ensure cultural integrity is maintained. The debate grew more intense, with various representatives expressing their concerns and hopes regarding the project. Ethan listened, responding when needed, while Lyra remained a calm presence, her answers thoughtful and considered. As the meeting drew on, a consensus began to emerge. The importance of the project was recognized, but so were the potential risks. It was agreed that a committee would be formed to oversee the project's development, including members from multiple species to ensure a broad range of perspectives. After the meeting, back in the quiet of his quarters, Ethan mulled over the day's discussions. Simon knocked on his door, a thoughtful look on his face. That was quite a session, huh? How do you feel? Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. A bit overwhelmed, but I understand their concerns. It's important that we get this right. Simon nodded, sitting down across from him. We're pioneers, Ethan, and being a pioneer isn't easy. But I believe we're on the right path. With Lyra's guidance and the committee's oversight, I think we can handle the challenges ahead. Ethan nodded, feeling reassured by Simon's words. Thanks, Simon. It's good to have you and Marcus on this with me. I think we can make something truly beneficial here, not just for us, but for all species on the station. As they continued to discuss their next steps, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges were significant, but the potential to create lasting understanding between species was a goal worth striving for. With careful consideration and ethical diligence, they could navigate the complexities of their work, ensuring that the voice of every species was heard and respected. Chapter 8. The Harmony. The newly established Interspecies Cultural Festival on Arcturus Station was a vibrant testament to the station's diverse population. Stalls displaying art, cuisine, and technology from dozens of different species lined the main concourse. Amidst this colorful array, Ethan and Lyra prepared their joint presentation, a highlight event scheduled to promote interspecies understanding. As they set up their booth, Ethan couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Look at all this, Lyra. A few months ago, this was just an idea, and now it's a reality. Lyra, adjusting the display of their translation device, smiled. It is beautiful to see. Your species has a saying, from small acorns, great oaks grow. It feels applicable here. Dr. Marcus Leung joined them, carrying the last piece of their exhibit, a large interactive screen that displayed a user-friendly version of their translation technology. This should give everyone a hands-on experience, he said, setting it up. Ready for the big speech? Ethan nodded, though his nerves were beginning to show. As I'll ever be. Simon, arriving with the final touches for their booth, a series of pamphlets and info sheets, clapped both men on the back. You'll do great. Just speak from the heart. The time for their presentation came soon enough. A crowd gathered, a mix of humans and aliens, all eager to learn about the breakthroughs in communication that had been achieved. Ethan stepped up to the microphone, Lyra beside him, her presence reassuring. "Ladies and gentlemen, and beings of all species," Ethan began, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Today, we are here not just to celebrate Arcturus Station's cultural diversity, but also a project that exemplifies what we can achieve when we work together." Lyra took over seamlessly, her voice translated into the myriad languages of the audience. "Our project started with a simple goal: to understand each other. What we have developed is a tool that allows us to do just that, breaking down the barriers of language and perception." As they explained the technology, demonstrating its use live, the audience was captivated. Questions flew from every corner about its applications, the technology behind it, and the implications for future diplomacy and trade. A Celian trader asked, could this be used to negotiate trade agreements where language barriers might otherwise cause misunderstandings? "Absolutely," Marcus chimed in, taking the question. "That's one of the potential applications. By ensuring clear communication, we reduce the risk of disputes and foster fairer negotiations." As the Q&A session wound down, Ethan and Lyra concluded their presentation with a few heartfelt words. "Where once there was alien silence and human voices speaking past each other, now there is dialogue, understanding, and shared voices," Ethan said, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. The applause that followed was enthusiastic and filled with a sense of unity. The crowd lingered, many approaching to try the translation device themselves, marveling at how it turned their words and intentions into comprehensible language for others. After the festival, as they were packing up, Simon looked around at the still buzzing concourse. "You know, this feels like the start of something even bigger." Today was about more than just showcasing our work. It was about bringing everyone a bit closer. Ethan agreed, feeling a profound connection to everyone on the station. "It's about understanding, in every sense of the word. And I think we made a big step towards that today." As the festival continued around them, Ethan, Lyra, Simon, and Marcus shared a quiet moment of satisfaction. Their project had not only succeeded in its aims, but had become a symbol of the potential for unity and cooperation across cultures and species. Ethan looked at Lyra, her expression one of serene accomplishment. "We did it," he said simply. "We did," she agreed, together. The harmony achieved that day resonated deeply within each of them, a harmony that promised to echo through the corridors of Arcturus Station for a long time to come.